Hey everybody, happy Good Friday. Welcome to a very special episode of Lightworkers Connect. As you guys know, this is normally a Wednesday show, but I've got my good friend and powerhouse speaker and best-selling author willing to stop by and share his new book with us today. So of course, I'm going to make time to welcome Mr. Poirier into our group here. Of course, Corey has been on my show many times before and is a good friend here at the Akashic Academy. So I'm super excited to talk about this fantastic book that Corey has written, the book of Why and How, which really dives into uncovering who are you? What is it that you have to share on the planet? How are you going to move into success and abundance and create this life that we all feel is possible, but not all of us have been able to actually execute in our life yet. So when you're around other people who are not only doing it, but who can educate you on how, you are getting closer and closer to creating the life that you've wanted to create and you've imagined since you were a kid. So I'm very excited to welcome Corey to my show today. While you guys are coming on, I'm going to invite you, like it up, heart it up, share this out, because the person who shares out this broadcast the most, I am going to send you a copy of this book. All right, so get to liking, get to sharing, and get to welcoming to the virtual stage here my good friend Corey Poirier. Corey, thanks for coming and joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Emily. I'm super excited. I was waiting for this all morning. Today is, of course, it's Good Friday, and it's very rare that I only schedule a minimal amount of things on a weekday, and so today I have like 2 things the whole day. So I was so stoked to be here because I can actually be in the moment and go, wow, this is coming up soon, whereas normally it's just thing back to back to back. So super excited.
Nice. I'm happy to have you here. I gotta tell you, authors and writers are some of my favorite people on the planet because in my guts and my soul, I am that too. I have been writing books ever since I was a little kid. And I just have always had a special love for writers because what we can convey when we can construct words in a way that shift people is so powerful. So share with us, what's the inspiration behind this latest book of yours?
So inspiration, it would be easy, Emily, to say this is the one inspiration. And this is kind of reminds me, I just watched, I never watched before. My girlfriend's got me sort of pulled into it a little bit, but Project Runway TV show.
Oh, yes.
And so I hadn't really watched it before. So I was watching this episode, and I don't even know which season we're on or nothing. Like, she just jumps around because she's seen a lot of them. But there was this guy on here, and he was basically, they were saying you need to be consistent. You have to have consistency with your line. And he didn't. And they asked him what was the inspiration. And he listed like 8 things. And everybody else was like just the flow of the water. And he's like listing all these things. So I don't want to be that guy today. But at the same time, there's more than one inspiration for the book because the book was written over an extended period. I mean, I like to say it's a culmination of my life's work to date, but it also was written over like a 4-year period as well. And so there were multiple inspirations. That's the truth and honest answer. And so one of them was that I get the question all the time, how can I find my purpose, my passion? Insert the word why here. How can I find my why? So that was, I guess we'll say, the big inspiration for why the title became the Book of Why and How, why the central focus of it was why. And here's the thing. If you don't find your why, the rest of it won't fall into place anyway. So it was really the first part. So that was one inspiration. The second one was, as you know, I do interviews with a lot of what I call enlightened superachievers. People sometimes are blown away by the number. It's well over 4,000 now. And we had 400 quotes in the book. So, that means 10% of the people we've interviewed we shared their insight in the books. And that was a big part of it too, because I've always believed that if I share other people's stuff and I spread the word for them and I wave the flag for them, it'll come back one way, shape, or form. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. I'm still spreading the word of good people. Right. But the second inspiration was these interviews I've done. I've been learning all this exclusive insight that I don't think I ever could have learned elsewhere. And I'm also able to sit back now and go, here's the most common in terms of traits. So I wanted to be able to share those traits in a book. And so the second section is about those traits. It's what are the kind of 5 or 6 things these high achievers all do really well. And then the third section, there's 3 sections in the book, is about doing it all in a meaningful way. And so that really just comes back to the fact that I've seen so many people earlier in my sales career not doing it in a meaningful way. And I wanted to remind people you can have a high level of success and still do it in a way that helps others. So that's the three inspirations, Emily. You know, I'd love to again have one, but it's people asking me how to find their why, these interviews I've done, wanting to share that, and then realizing that some people don't realize you can have as much success or more doing it meaningfully.
I love it. So Colleen and Bexter, my girl Bexy Girl, are all sharing out there. If you're joining us just now, I'm going to just remind you, the person who shares the most is going to get their own copy. I am going to send you a copy. This is such a powerful and amazing book, not just because you quoted me in it, but it's really such a fantastic book that I ordered 10 copies to give to my family and my friends, and I have one copy left that you guys are my friends out there. The one of you who shares the most, I will reach out and get your address, and I'm going to send you a copy of this fantastic book. Corey, I find a lot of similarity in the things that we do, although I am admittedly probably farther down the metaphysical rabbit hole than you are, my friend. I got a little more woo-woo in my juice.
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
I really love the idea of helping people to find their why. And I love that you don't do it for them. Because I know early on in my career, like I accessed the space of the Akashic Records, which is an energetic imprint of everything that you're good at, the highest possible futures for you. And it's very easy for me to tap in and say, like, this is your purpose, and this is your purpose, and this is your why. And Spirit put me in check about that not long ago and said, that's not your job to tell people. You can hold the space for them, and you can help them see the attributes that they have about themselves that help bring out their why and how. But you can't tell that to people anymore. Like I used to do whole shows where I'd be like, come on in and we'll figure out your life purpose. And they were like, nah, you can't do that. So I really love that you've given us a guide on how to do that, because that's not really anybody else's business to tell you, is it?
Well, I'll say in my experience, no. And to back that further up, I can talk about, the fact of how many people I brought into the show where I never would have anticipated their why going to where it did. So I'm not sure that we would have helped them uncover it if we would have taken the traditional path. Flip side is, though, for myself personally, uncovering my why wasn't a process that anybody else could have helped me with. Much like nobody could tell me to quit smoking back when I was like an 18-year-old and I was still smoking cigarettes. Nobody could tell me what my why is or how to get there. The most they can do, I'll correct that. The most they can do is say, have you ever tried this? Have you thought of this? What about if you did this? And get me to find it on my own through some strategies. And so because what I was able to do, Emily, just to kind of back up with the book, why I put the exercises in I did, it's because I had a happy accident and found my why, as you know. And it's something I never expected. I never expected to be speaking on stages as somebody who started out where I couldn't even get in front of people. Like the first time I spoke in public, I don't remember a word of what I said. I turned shades of color and almost passed out. My knees were knocking, all the things you hear. And my next time on stage was worse. And so how could I have anticipated that this would have been my why?
Right.
That what's really cool is once I found it, I was able to go back and join up the dots, as Steve Jobs called it. So I was able to see what were the pivotal times that I was given hints that this was my direction. And so I said, what were the things that could have helped me find it? And then so I started interviewing people and asking them, how did you find yours? And so that exercise that you're talking about, the way I worded in the book, was basically from what I discovered by looking backwards, and then also asking people who had found theirs, how they found theirs, and figured out there was a system you could use. I just simply didn't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm. Will you tell us that story about how you found your why? Will you tell us the details of your personal story?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you know which one I was driving at there, but I'll share it either way, just in case. So the short version, because I could make it a long story, but I won't. Basically, I had a stage play in a fringe festival. And so I was in this fringe fest. Sorry, I'll correct that. I put a play in this fringe fest, wrote the stage play for the fringe fest, was the director of the stage play, and I had no part in the play at all. I was the writer, director, and the dude behind the scenes that would, when they'd run out, say, "Oh, here's your costume." That I wanted to be just as a person in general, I wanted to be that guy that wrote the screenplay in the basement. I played guitar and stuff like that. I wanted to be the guy that wrote the music for other musicians. I did not want to be on the stage, which is really ironic when you see my life today. And that's why a lot of people say, "Oh, you're so lucky that you're born being able to speak on a stage." I mean, I have proof that that's not the truth. I still have video of these early nights whenever I was covered in sweat speaking. And I'll explain what I mean. That's where I'm getting to with the story. But I had a stage play in a fringe fest. One of the actors sprained his ankles on the way to the play. And all of a sudden, we needed an extra actor to give him extra time, the lead actor, to get backstage and do, like, he was hobbling. So he needed extra time. So I had to write another person into the play. Catch-22 is only one person knows the lines of the play. The third night into
you.
7-show run, nobody else knows those words. And it took us hours, like 80 hours or more, to learn the line. So I wasn't going to get somebody else ready. So I had to write myself into the play. In fairness, what I did, my easy way out, is I wrote myself a part where I come out onto the stage with my back to the audience, wearing a Triple H wrestling t-shirt and a long-haired wig. And so that way nobody could see my face. So that was really my second or third time on stage, and still I wasn't facing an audience, and I was still covered in sweat. So I did this for another 4 nights. The play finished its run. One of the actors says, "Hey, I don't know if you heard about the local comedy workshop. There's a stand-up comedy workshop at the university. Want to give it a go?" And I said, "That sounds terrifying." Now, those of you listening now, I don't know if you know this, but the number one fear in the world above death is public speaking. So Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, has said that means for the average person, if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. So that being said, I went to this workshop because I figured it doesn't mean I'm ever going to get on a stage just to go to a workshop. Went to the workshop. We were taught, here's how you adjust the mic stand, and that Steve Martin rules. That was pretty much our training. We were told the third week we're going to watch people entertain us. We show up at the comedy club week number 3, 5 minutes to showtime. We found out that we were the comics and the entertainers. So number one fear in the world, and I'd already failed at it multiple times, and now I found out that I was supposed to be this comic. So I went to the bathroom, not jokingly, I say this when people laugh, looking for an exit window to try to climb out. So nobody could see me walk out the front door. 15 of us paid for the workshop. I came back out of the 15 that paid. Most of them were entertainers, like on film and stuff like that, and 8 had walked out the front door. So over 50% of the people that were in the entertainment business and paid walked out the front door. So the new debate, of course, now there's 7 left, is who's going up first. We called him the sacrificial lamb. I went to Toastmasters.
Some people just hearing this story, like, I'm putting myself in that position and I'm about to crawl out of my skin. I gotta just shake it out a little bit. Okay, keep going.
You know what? I still, every time I say it, I still get that feeling. So it's freaky. So it was about 5-2 whenever we started the discussion of who's going up first, and it was about 10 after 8, and the show's supposed to start at 8. When I finally clued in, nobody's ever going to go up first if somebody doesn't take the bull by the horns. I had been to Toastmasters once, was told, go up and face your fear first if you're going to do it. So I jumped on the stage. I grabbed the mic, took it out of the stand, told what I considered to be the best joke I ever told in my life, to dead silence. Oh. And I said, okay, well, this is bad. And the sweat starts coming down the side of my face, but I said, I'm already up. I've done the hard part. So let's go in for joke number 2. And I dived into joke number 2. It was just as bad. So I was a hot mess. I basically bombed on my very first time on stage. And then the guy who put on the show called me over, gave me the smuck in the back of the head, and he said, "You idiot. We didn't even turn the mic on yet." So nobody could hear me, these great jokes I told. And so I bombed. And so the interesting part is we turned the mic back on because they said, well, they didn't hear my jokes. That's why they didn't laugh. And I told them again, and then I bombed again. The joke still didn't work. So I actually am probably one of the only comics I know who's ever bombed with the same material twice in the same not just the same night, but the same set. And so that was my first foray into comedy. But so that, you might say, well, how did this help you find your passion for public speaking? Where is this going? And so what happened, Emily, from this point gets a lot easier. Basically, I kept doing stand-up. I kept going back and bombing night after night. But I liked the idea of getting my message out finally, as a writer, as what have you. And so I saw Tony Robbins speak, and I was like, is that dude getting paid to do this? And so I Googled and did a lot of work to find out that, yeah, this dude is getting paid to do this. And I realized speaking had all of what I liked about stand-up and some of what it got rid of some of what I didn't like. And so the slow and short path from there is I basically kept doing stand-up because I knew it was a great learning ground for speaking. But I actually transitioned into becoming a speaker. And what happened was from that point forward, I gained a love of speaking that I didn't even have for stand-up. And it actually could pay the bills. I could actually get the comedy out in a more politically correct way. So it had all the things I loved. And so I basically did both for a number of years. But I, at that point, had really transitioned into a speaker, and that became my path and my passion. But you can see how there was a lot of things that had to happen that were accidents. And for me to have to say yes to things that I probably wouldn't have said yes to normally for that to even happen. So how could anybody else have said, this is your path? Anyway, there's the long story.
I love the perseverance that you show, and that is a really powerful quality in figuring out how to create what it is that we want to experience on the planet, because many times we're going to come up against what looks like failure. I had a similar story. Many of you guys know that my history is in Hollywood as an actress. And anybody remember the show Saved by the Bell? I mean, it's a bad Saturday. Remember that show?
Oh my God.
So I had an audition for Saved by the Bell, and I was so prepared. Like, I had paid a coach to work with me. I was ready to nail that audition. And I go in, and again, the nerves take over, and I'm sweating, and it's just like, I go in, I totally bomb the audition, and I'm leaving feeling just so crappy about having bombed that audition. And I'm in my car, and I'm driving back to my apartment because I was at the Warner Brothers lot. And I thought, you know what? Screw this. I didn't move all the way from Missouri to suck at an audition. I'm going back in there, which is not the way Hollywood works, by the way, everybody. You get your one shot, you're done. You don't get to go. So I march back in that casting studio, and I'm like, you know what? I sucked just now, and I'm better than that. And I give her my whole speech, and I'm like, can I audition again? And she's like, okay. And so I go in, and I freaking bombed it even worse the second time. Like, I was just like, I know, I tell the story now, and I just want to crawl into my shirt and have this interview be over. It was so freaking uncomfortable. And even telling the story now, I just have to laugh at myself. But there was a perseverance, there was a determination to my spirit that I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And regardless of how many times I fall on my face, I have that get back up and go essence of wanting to do it again, because I know in my gut that I can succeed and I can meet that level of expectation. I have never even thought to like dig in and explore what qualities create that in a person. And if we don't feel like we naturally have those, how can we cultivate those more? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, maybe much like my story, I think when people listening, they're waiting for this super amazing happy ending to the story about how you got the role in the second time. Probably like the stand-up when they found out the mic wasn't turned on in my story. They're like, oh, he gets his chance and then he knocks it out of the park. Nope. Anyway, so I just had to share that. So Emily, I love that story, by the way. Like I said, it's a totally different story, but we both had the same, I guess, sort of intuitions that didn't serve us maybe well, but at the same time became brilliant stories. I know you do speaking, you do some speaking as well. And you have to, just so you know, you have to include that story in some of your talks. Okay. That story will go over huge. But back to your point or your question about it is what I would say, there's a couple things. I guess the one thing I would say is here's what helped me in general. I'm going to say take on that ability to not give up or to try something new. It's something I told myself and still tell myself. I don't have to tell myself as much now, but I told myself and still tell myself every now and then, which is basically, I always think of that story of the person, and I'm not talking this is like an urban myth, this is like this happens, but the story of the person that's sitting at a bar when they're 60 years old and said, you know what, I could have done this. Mm-hmm. I like as an example in this case, Saved by the Bell, I heard about this audition for Saved by the Bell, but I never went and auditioned. But I could have been an actor if I wanted to. My friends all told me that. I never wanted to be that person. And so my way to, try to tackle some of these fears was to say, do you want this to be the moment that you always remember and say, I could have done this? I could have, for example, that night of stand-up, I could have actually tried stand-up comedy once in my life. But if I would have been one of the 8 that walked out the door, for the record, that we were in a small city, and right from the day I lived there till the day I moved, which was actually, it was only like 2 years ago, like officially finally moved. So I lived there off and on throughout all those years. So whatever that was, like, I don't know, 15 years. I only seen one of those people like 2 times ever, never seen the other 7 again in a small town. So in other words, what I'm telling you is they never went and got back on a stand-up stage in that town anyway, in that city. So I could have been that person. And so what I told myself is I don't want to be that person who could have done this. But once I walked away the first time, the fear only gets bigger then. Yeah. And so I guess what I told myself, Emily, internally, and continue to tell myself whenever I'm like, oh, this is bigger than me, is do I want to be the person that's telling other people about the stories of what I could have been or could have done? So that's what gives me that extra juice. And then as far as cultivating that in yourself, that's a whole nother story. But what I will say, this might be the easy answer, and I'm sure I'm happily open to exploring this if you want. But one of my TED Talks is on stepping outside your comfort zone. So crushing your fears by getting outside your comfort zone. And there is actually a strategy I provide during that talk for how to do exactly what you said. So if we're talking how do I grow my confidence and get outside my comfort zone, I provide an actual sound strategy in that talk. That's a 20-minute talk. I mean, you can ask me questions if you want on it, or I can share the essence of it, or they could, listeners, you can go, and viewers, you can go watch the talk, whatever you prefer. But so the first part I would say is that's what I told myself, is I just didn't want to have regrets and say what could have been. And I basically kept reminding myself that enough so that it made me almost mad. No, you can't be that person that doesn't try this. And then the secondary part is I learned there is kind of a system you can use.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you get into TEDx talk version of who you are, because it really inspires me. Do you guys hear that echo, or is it just me?
I heard it there, but I don't now.
Okay, maybe I'm going to back away just a little bit so as to not confuse myself as I'm talking. You really inspire me with who you are and that getting out on stage and sharing that message. So much so, guys, that Corey is mentoring me through the process of being an online personality to going out into public speaking. And I don't know if I've shared with you yet, but I have my first speaking event this Saturday, which is tomorrow, by the way. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that is awesome.
I would love for you to share the essence of that. But before you go there, I just want to tell you guys how important it is really to get outside of your comfort zone. Many of you guys know that my family has recently moved from Southern California to the Lake Tahoe area, where my husband's the director of development at a school that is a pillar of their learning, which is to get kids out of their comfort zone. So just a quick example, the kids decided they wanted to study immigration. So they study all the socioeconomic, all the parts on paper. Then they go outside of their comfort zone and they actually take a 10-mile dark and silent hike from Mexico across the border so that they know what that experience is like. They are so far out of their comfort zone, but in a controlled environment so that these kids get comfortable to be in that space. It's like Jillian Michael said this one time. I was working out with my neighbor to her home videos, and she was like, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So yeah, share with us the process of how do we get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Absolutely. And I'll add in two quick things just to what you just shared there as well, Emily. First of all, it was in her Ripped in 30 DVD that she said that.
Oh, you know that one.
Yeah, I have to say, I need to get back to it. I had the best success. This is a side note for anybody who really wants to know how to crush it, for lack of a better way of saying it, in weight loss. I've done P90X3, P90X multiple times. We had Tony Horton on the show. But what I will say is, Jillian, Ripped in 30, I had more success weight loss wise in 30 days than I have ever had in any other program in 30 days. And this is the way I can say this, by the way, and I'm not knocking Tony, because Tony's program is 90 days. But in the 30 days, Ripped in 30. Anyway, so I knew which one you meant because I heard her say that so much from that one program. Second thing I want to say, when you talked about it being in schools, on comfort zone approaches to things, what I think should be in schools as well. And, maybe I'm going to start saying this in every interview so that, somebody takes me up on it. But there should be a course on how to find your purpose in school. Just a side note. So that all said, in terms of some of the steps that I provide people in that TED Talk, and again, if you want more detail, you can go watch the talk. But what I share is basically the system I noticed that people use to find that area outside their comfort zone. And so what does that look like? Basically, and I visualize it on the board and everything with the talk, but basically what I tell people they need to do is they need to, first of all, figure out what's inside and outside their comfort zone. So, draw a little circle, about our spider method that we use, but so similar type thing, draw a circle. And then if you're wanting to tackle stuff that's outside your comfort zone, make sure are they outside or inside your comfort zone. So, and I think it adds some confidence to be able to put stuff that's inside your comfort zone. So let's say, as an example, you're totally comfortable speaking in public, but you're not comfortable with heights. Let's just say that's the example. Okay. Then you might put speaking inside your comfort zone or heights outside your comfort zone. Or maybe to give you that confidence, you say, I'm comfortable speaking on camera, doing live video, but I'm not comfortable speaking on a stage. So the point is you want to build a circle that has some things inside it, some things outside it. That's the first step. Second step is, now that you know what's outside your comfort zone, and let's say it's speaking on a stage, what you want to do is you want to figure out what are the steps I'd have to take if I ever want to practically jump on a stage. So maybe it's take a program like ours. Maybe it's, we still got to get together on our call that we're going to have shortly talking about the speaking business. But maybe it's studying books on speaking. Maybe it's taking a course on speaking. Maybe it's going to Toastmasters, which I mentioned earlier. So maybe it's those steps that you can take. That doesn't really mean you're actually on a stage. You don't have to take the big step yet. So take the smaller steps. So what I'm saying is to break it down into pieces. And then what I also recommend is you reward yourself each time you hit one of those milestones. So just going to Toastmasters, even if you don't talk, you just go and watch a group, reward yourself with something for doing that. Maybe if you're somebody who's like a fit freak, for lack of a better way of saying it, maybe you buy yourself a chocolate dip ice cream cone after you do that one thing, if that's your thing. So now what you've done is you've started taking the small steps. So you're taking action on the small steps. And you don't have to take this big, scary step. You're now taking these small ones that don't seem as scary at first. You're giving yourself a reward, so you're going to want to take the next small step because by nature, we want those rewards. So now you're closer. And then so what I also recommend, before you take that big step, then you start putting some things in place like you want an accountability partner. So you want to share somebody, here's what I'm doing. And you're still rewarding yourself, so you're still giving yourself that, but the accountability partner will be able to give you the raw. So the reason why for some people working out together is way more effective than working out on their own. So have an accountability partner. I shared on the TedX talk that I went and did a talk for the Brooklyn Navy Club Boys and Girls Club in Brooklyn, New York. And we were kind of told before we go there, it's a rough area, be forewarned type thing. And so I had my let's say, accountability partner, which was my girlfriend. And, the two of us together went to the talk. We didn't worry about the what ifs. And basically I said to myself, the kids that are in this Boys and Girls Club that are here to hear this message go through way worse every day than I'll go through once in my life. So, but the point is that to get outside my comfort zone, I had somebody with me. I had an accountability partner or somebody else that could sort of be my tag team partner in the whole thing. So I recommend you get somebody that can help you through the process. And then the other thing I would say is that once you've taken those minor steps, you reward yourself, you have a partner that can help you through it and get you that extra motivation. Then when you get to that final step, then it's a lot easier to finally take action on that final step. So a lot of people never get there, because they think the whole thing, if I want to get on stage and speak, it involves I have to basically find somebody that'll let me speak on their stage and then walk up on stage and start speaking with basically very little preparation and no time to prepare. But the process I just shared with you, Emily, could be over 3 months. Right. That's the rush. Unless you have a reason you have to get on stage and speak, but you think it might be your passion area and you want to get outside your comfort zone and try it, can't you do that over a process? I jumped out of a plane like 2010, I think it was, and I'm scared of heights. Well, I didn't go and basically go show up, and they said, "All right, here's your sack. Give me a parachute, and here's your tandem partner. See ya." I mean, I had to go through a training for like 2 hours. I had to go through watch videos. I had to go through trainings with instructors. My point is that there were baby steps before I ever had to get up in the plane. And we even had a mock, like as if we were jumping out, like the whole thing. Like we went through a whole process. So those would be my mini steps. The only thing in that case, Emily, is that the mini steps are all done in about 2 hours versus maybe months. But does that answer the question? Because I'm trying to give a quick summary rather than going through an 18-minute video. But those are some of the major steps: is figure out what's outside your comfort zone, baby step it. So basically figure out what the baby steps are, reward yourself for each baby step you take, and make sure you have somebody that can give you that motivation along the way.
Yeah, that's really good. And I almost wish that we had more time so we could dissect the psychology behind all of those pieces and why they're so powerful. Because once we recognize and we acknowledge why something's so powerful, it's like you get another big old boost of power. But we'll pause this and we will come back to this conversation. I'll have you back, guys. In the meantime, go check out Corey's. All of those TEDx talks are on YouTube, so make sure that you check those out. I do have one more question for you, though, before we go, since we are super woo-woo around here. I like to talk about the different psychic senses and abilities, and I don't know if you recognize yourself as psychic, Mr. Corey Poirier. However, we all are, so I do. And I was wondering which psychic sense plays the biggest part when you're writing. So you have clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. So maybe you sit down, you type, and you can just like see the words and they're coming out. Clairaudience is clear hearing. So it's almost like you're somebody's dictating the book to you and you're just moving it. through and typing it out. There's clairsentience, which is a clear feeling, which maybe you just like sit down and you start connecting with the emotion and you just feel what the right thing is. And then there's the clear knowing, where it's just like the idea all of a sudden pops into your head. All the information is there. You've got a knowingness about what it is that you have to say. Have you ever thought about that before? Which one of them you use? First of all, that's the first thing I want to know is, have you ever like broken it down to figure out which one's working in you?
So, okay, here's the full disclosure answer. I didn't know each of them to be able to compare it to each of them, but I've known since day one which one it is.
Cool. Yes, that's many times the way it happens. Okay, so drum roll. Can you tell us which one it is?
Absolutely. That was an awesome drum roll, by the way.
Thank you.
It's clairvoyance, and you can correct me if I'm wrong when I describe this, but this is why I say that. And this started way before writing literature. Emily, I think you've heard me share this before. I didn't read my first book until I was 27 years of age. So if anybody's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was the book. So if anybody's listening saying it's too late for me to be a reader or a writer, here's the real truth, is that I didn't read a book till I was, like I say, 27 years of age. I didn't write my first book until 2010, so 8 years ago. This is my 13th book. And I have another one that's coming out really soon. And my mother said at the time, before I wrote, it's sort of jokingly, but some truth to it, I don't think you can write a book until it was earlier in my life. And so things is I realized it through songwriting is where I realized it. So way before I started writing anything in terms of literature, I actually, when I wrote music, I would write this song and the words would come to me and I'd be writing them and I'd be like, who's giving me this music? Like, where's this come from? And so you hear people taking like 8 years to write a song. That wasn't me. Either the song came out in as long as it took to write it, like 5 or 10 minutes, or it didn't come out. And I mean, my last CD, and this is not a Me Inc. thing, my last CD was nominated for a Rock Recording of the Year. And it was all written that way. So I'm saying this in the sense that it's not like, when I say this, if somebody thinks, oh, maybe he just writes in the garage and it's all garbage music, and he's saying, oh, but it comes out right away and I only take 2 minutes. What I'm saying is that it actually comes out coherently. You know, it's music that there's music videos out for on the radio. So it actually comes out to me that way. So that's how it's felt like somebody was giving me the words and to some degree the music. And then so what happened is when I shifted over and continued different writing paths, so for example, authorship, it did the same thing. So when I write, I'd love to be the person, because I love the concept of outlining stuff on a wall and saying, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters. Not that person. So is that where you're going? Things come to me?
And that's what I would say about that. Clairvoyance is really a seeing it. So if it's almost like you can just like look up in your mind's eye and you see the words on the screen up there and then you translate them down and bring them down, it's absolutely clairvoyance. And really doesn't really matter which one of them they are. I love the fact that you've been open enough to share that you're being a channel, and then that information seems to be coming from a higher aspect of you or a higher aspect of consciousness. And that is really, in my opinion, once everybody in the world begins to tune into those higher levels of consciousness, we can really step into and accomplish things much greater than if we're standing in our 3D mind and we're questioning it and we're struggling to get the words out, to get connected to inspiration. So thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that with us, to share with us a little bit of what your process looks like. Guys, I want to remind you, we're wrapping up, but it's not too late to share. Share it out, share it out, share it out. I'm going to go back and look and see who shared this broadcast the most, and I'm going to send you a free copy of Corey's book. And I invite you guys to connect with Corey. Where's the best place for them to connect with you, my friend?
So two options. One, if someone's looking to grab the book on Amazon, you can search my name.
Okay.
Or the book's name. Or it's under y.com is where the print version is. And the print version, like I said, you can search it on Amazon. Unfortunately, they're not in the thing. And the second thing is my main website, which is that.com.
So I just really can't encourage you guys enough to get connected with Corey. buy the book, okay? Not only for yourself, but let's support each other in this environment, in this space. You guys now have a personal connection with Corey. If you're somebody who wants to make a difference on the planet, you have a big message that you want to share, there's something to be said by supporting other people who are doing that. So I can't urge you enough. Support Corey as he is sharing this. Let's make it a best-selling book for Corey. It's a really awesome book. And Corey, I look forward to the second installment of this conversation where we can dive more into getting outside the comfort zone, because that's where all the magic happens. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's the really cool meme. I'll see if I can go grab it off of the internet and post it for you guys. But it talks about, here's your comfort zone, and it shows a little circle. And then there's a big old, like a dot way out here outside of the circle. And it says, this is where the magic happens. So this is where the magic is happening. Get connected with people who are making that own magic happen in their life. I can tell you, like, we've shared 2 stories where we have been so grossly uncomfortable in our life. But it's okay to be in that space. You're still a cool person. You're still successful, even if you fall flat on your damn face outside of your comfort zone. That is truly where the magic and the growth happens. And people like Corey and myself are here to walk through that process with you. Thank you guys for spending your Good Friday with us. Namaste.
Namaste.
We'll see you here again. Bye.